Hello, this is Mark Satterfield, and welcome to the Velvet Rope Playbook. Tonight's chapter, Selling the Final Frontier. For most of history, space was something only astronauts dreamed of. Kids imagined themselves in rocket ships, but only a select few ever got close. You had to be best of the best. Fighter pilots, engineers, scientists. NASA didn't pick you unless you were flawless. But today, well, the game has changed. Now, if you've got the money and lots of it, you can buy your way into orbit. You don't need NASA, you don't need military training. What you need is the ability to cut a very large check. Blue Origin, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, and Axiom Space are making it possible for private citizens to leave Earth's atmosphere. And here's what's fascinating. Billionaires aren't hesitating. They're lining up, not because it's safe, not because it's comfortable, and not because it's cheap. They're lining up because nothing signals pioneering status like being one of the first people in history to look down on Earth from space. Let's start with Mark Davis, a hedge fund manager from New York. Mark was one of the very first to buy a ticket on Virgin Galactic. When asked why, he didn't mention weightlessness or the view of the stars. He said, I want to be able to tell my grandchildren I was one of the first. That's the psychology in a nutshell. Mark wasn't buying a flight. He was buying a permanent story, one that elevates him in the eyes of his family and peers. So that's lesson number one. Affluent clients will happily pay for stories that give them identity. They're not buying feature, they're buying what those features say about them. And then there's Lisa Bennett, a tech entrepreneur from California. Lisa is a serial adventurer. She's climbed Everest, trekked to the South Pole, and runs an ultra marathon across the Sahara. When she heard that Axiom Space was offering a 10-day stay aboard the International Space Station, she signed up immediately. When asked if she was excited, she smiled and said, Honestly, I hate the idea of floating in a mental box, but the bragging rights? Worth every penny. That's a powerful insight. Comfort is not the currency, exclusivity is. Wealthy clients are willing to endure comfort, or discomfort rather, even risk, if the reward is being able to say, I've done what almost no one else has. So that's lesson number two. When selling to the affluent, don't overemphasize convenience. What matters most is exclusivity, rarity, and the bragging rights that come with it. Let's next meet Raj Shah, an investor from Chicago. Raj bought a seat on one of Blue Origin's very first flight. He could have waited a few years until the price dropped and the technology was more proven, but he refused. Why? He put it plainly. If you're not on the first flights, you're just another tourist. I don't want to be number 782. I want to be number 7. Same rocket, same view, same floating in zero gravity. But Raj was willing to pay 3 times more for one reason. He wanted to be early. And that's lesson number 3. First access is a luxury all its own. The wealthy will pay multiples just to be ahead of the crowd. And here's how you can use this. Don't always compete on better. Sometimes you win by giving clients the privilege of being first. And if you want to know how to weave exclusivity and first access into your own brand narrative, go to getwealthyclients.com and pick up my book, Velvet Rope Story Selling. It will show you how to frame your service as the first access choice in your industry. So let's rewind for a moment. Back in 2001, Tom Richards, a retired engineer and multimillionaire, became the world's very first space tourist. He paid $20 million to ride a Russian rocket to the International Space Station. 7 days, cramped capsule, no champagne, no luxury accommodations. Why do it? Because Tom wanted the title of being the first, and history remembers him as exactly that. That's lesson number 4. Wealthy clients often make decisions not on immediate utility, but on legacy value. They ask, what will this say about me? How will I be remembered? So now let's look at something completely different. Ken Ito, a billionaire investor, didn't just want to go into space. He bought out an entire SpaceX mission around the moon. And instead of filling the seats with other investors, he invited artists, musicians, and creatives. Why? Because for him, it wasn't just about going, it was about curating who he went with. He wanted to shape the story, not just be a part of it. And that's lesson number 5. Affluent clients don't just want rare experiences, they want to shape the context of those experiences. Who else is there? Who are they photographed with? Who do they share the memory with? And that's why you should always think about what context your service provides, not just the outcome. And now the industry is evolving. Space Perspectives is selling balloon rides to the edge of space. These flights aren't as extreme as rockets, but they're comfortable. Giant windows, plush seating, champagne service, and a gentle ascent. This is the next phase. The pioneers, people like Mark, Lisa, Raj, and Tom, took the early risks. Now there's a second wave of clients who want the same rarity, but wrapped in style and safety. Which brings us to lesson number 6. Once the pioneers paved the way, there's always a market for refinement. If you can serve both, the bold early adopters and the later comfort seeking crowd, you multiply your appeal. The thread that connects all these lessons, the wealthy aren't buying the trip themselves. They're buying pioneer identity, bragging rights, legacy, and status. And this is where it comes back to you. Whatever you sell, you need to ask, how can I make this feel pioneering? Is there a way I can position it as first access? Can I make the story more important or at least as important as the service? How can I give my clients bragging rights they can't get anywhere else? Because if you can do that, you stop competing on features, you start competing on story. And affluent clients will always pay for the right story. And that's exactly what I teach in Velvet Rope Story Selling. If you haven't read it yet, head over to getwealthyclients.com. It's the playbook for turning your brand into a ticket to pioneering status in your industry. Here's the truth. Billionaires aren't buying rocket rides, they're buying access. They're buying bragging rights. They're buying the chance to say, I was there before anyone else. And you don't need to sell rockets to replicate that. All you need to do is position yourself as the one who makes your clients feel like pioneers in their own world. When you do that, you don't just win business, you build loyalty that lasts for years. Because once you've given someone a story that makes them look like a pioneer, well, they'll never want to let you go. This is Mark Satterfield. Thanks for listening to this chapter of the Velvet Rope Playbook. I'll be back at you with something new, but until then, bye for now.